The great meeting hall on Nexus Prime was bigger than any human stadium. Crystal walls rose high into the purple sky, and strange lights floated above the gathered aliens. Sarah sat in the small human section, looking out at hundreds of different alien species. Some had tentacles, others had scales, and many had forms that hurt to look at for too long. Sarah was Earth's top diplomat. She had spent 3 years trying to build friendships with these alien races. Now she sat alone with her small team while 847 different species prepared to vote on humanity's future. Chancellor stood at the center podium. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. His people, the hegemony, controlled dozens of star systems. His voice echoed through the hall as he spoke. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," said, "we are here to decide what to do about the humans. In just 200 years since we first met them, they have become a problem we cannot ignore." Sarah's hands tightened into fists. She knew what was coming, but hearing it still made her angry. "The humans learn too fast," continued. "When we gave them basic space technology, they improved it within months. When we shared our quantum drive designs, they built better engines than ours within a year. This is not natural. No species should advance this quickly." Murmurs of agreement filled the hall. Sarah looked around at the alien faces. Most showed fear or suspicion when they looked at the human section. "But speed is not our only concern," said another speaker. This one looked like a giant insect with silver wings. "Human military tactics are unpredictable. They do not follow standard battle formations. They create new strategies during fights. Our war computers cannot predict their actions." More voices joined in. A blob-like creature spoke about human cultural habits. "They adapt to any environment. They learn our languages in weeks. They copy our customs and then change them. They do not respect the proper order of things." Sarah wanted to stand up and defend her species, but she knew it would not help. The decision had already been made before this meeting started. This was just a show for the galaxy to watch. "The humans claim they want peace," said, "but look at their history. They have fought wars on their own planet for thousands of years. Even now, with all our technology, they still have conflicts between their nations. How can we trust such a violent species?" A reptilian delegate stood up. "I have studied their entertainment. Their stories are full of war and conquest. They celebrate warriors and fighters. This is not the mindset of a peaceful species." Sarah finally could not stay quiet anymore. She stood up, and her voice carried across the massive hall. "You judge us by our stories and our past," she said. "But look at what we have done since joining this galaxy. We have helped stop 3 wars. We have shared our medical knowledge freely. We have never attacked anyone first." Some aliens turned to look at her, but most ignored her words. "The humans helped end the border conflict," Sarah continued. "Our negotiators found a solution when your diplomats had failed for 50 years. We taught the people new farming methods that ended their food shortage. How is this the behavior of a violent species?" 4 arms moved in a dismissive gesture. "Small good deeds cannot hide a dangerous nature. The humans are growing too powerful too fast. If we wait longer, we may not be able to control them at all." The word control hung in the air like poison. Sarah realized this was never about fear or safety. It was about power. The established alien races did not want competition. "We propose the Terran Containment Protocol," announced a delegate from the Trade Federation. "Earth will be surrounded by a quantum barrier. No ships can enter or leave their solar system. The humans will be safe on their world, and we will be safe from their expansion." Sarah felt her heart sink. A prison. They wanted to put all of humanity in a prison. "This is not about safety," she said, her voice growing louder. "This is about fear. You are afraid that humans might become equals in this galaxy. You want to keep us locked away so you can continue to control everything." "The human speaks of equality," laughed a crystalline being. But equality must be earned over centuries of proven behavior. Humans have had their chance, and they have shown they cannot be trusted with freedom. The voting began. One by one, species after species voted yes for the containment protocol. The hegemony voted yes. The Trade Federation voted yes. The Crystal Dominion voted yes. Each yes was like a nail in humanity's coffin. Sarah watched the numbers climb. 100 votes for containment, 200 votes, 500 votes. Only 3 species chose not to vote at all. Everyone else wanted humanity locked away. When the final count was announced, Chancellor smiled with satisfaction. 844 species have voted in favor of the Terran Containment Protocol. The motion passes by overwhelming majority. Cheers erupted throughout the hall. Aliens celebrated as if they had won a great victory. Sarah felt sick to her stomach. The quantum barrier will be activated within 72 hours, announced. Earth will be completely isolated. This decision is final and cannot be changed. Sarah stood up one last time. The hall grew quiet as she prepared to speak. Her team looked at her with worried faces, but she ignored them. "You think you know humans," she said, her voice clear and strong. "You think we are just violent and unpredictable, but you have made one big mistake." "And what is that?" asked with amusement. "You mistake our restraint for weakness," Sarah said. "For 3 years, we have been patient. We have followed your rules and tried to earn your respect. We have held back our true abilities because we wanted to be part of your community." She looked around at all the alien faces watching her. "You will regret this decision," she said simply. "When the galaxy needs us most, you will remember this day and wish you had made a different choice." The aliens laughed and dismissed her words as typical human arrogance. Within 3 days, the quantum barrier surrounded Earth's solar system. Humanity disappeared behind an impenetrable wall. The galaxy celebrated its safety, not knowing it had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. 3 years passed since the quantum barrier locked Earth away from the galaxy. The alien species celebrated what they called the Great Solution. Trade routes that had been disrupted by human ships now ran smoothly. Border disputes between alien nations decreased without human mediators getting involved. The galaxy felt more predictable and safe. Chancellor often spoke about the success of the containment protocol. "The galaxy has returned to natural order," he would tell other leaders. "Without human interference, our ancient systems work as they should." But not everyone was celebrating. Doctor was a scientist who had helped build the quantum barrier technology. She spent her days monitoring the energy readings from the barrier around Earth's solar system. What she found made her lose sleep at night. "The readings are wrong," she told her assistant as they studied the data screens. "The barrier should be stable, but these energy patterns keep changing." Her assistant, a young named looked at the colorful lines dancing across their monitor. "Maybe the humans are trying to break through the barrier." "No," Doctor said, shaking her head. "If they were attacking the barrier, we would see different patterns. This looks like construction, massive construction projects happening inside their solar system." The data showed energy spikes that suggested huge manufacturing operations. Exotic radiation readings indicated experiments with technologies that should not have been possible for an isolated species. Most disturbing of all, the barrier itself was changing in ways its creators never intended. "Look at this," Doctor pointed to a section of data. "The quantum field is being modified from the inside. The humans are somehow changing the properties of our own barrier technology." I stared at the numbers. "How is that possible? They have been cut off from all our scientific databases. They should not know how the barrier works." "That is what worries me," Doctor replied. She tried to present her findings to the Galactic Science Council, but most members dismissed her concerns. "The humans are probably just building new cities," said one council member. Isolated species often focus on domestic projects when they cannot expand outward. But Doctor knew the difference between city construction and whatever was happening behind the barrier. The energy signatures were unlike anything in the galactic databases. It was as if humanity was developing completely new forms of technology. While the galaxy ignored the strange readings from Earth, other problems began to appear. The Devourers had been detected at the edge of galactic space. These ancient machine beings traveled between galaxies, consuming entire star systems for resources. Their scout ships had been spotted near the outer rim worlds. In the past, human patrol fleets had helped monitor the galaxy's borders. Their unpredictable tactics and advanced sensors had been valuable for tracking unknown threats. Without human ships, the galaxy's early warning systems had gaps that made everyone nervous. "We should have kept some human ships active," admitted General of the Hegemony military. "Their scanning technology was better than ours for detecting stealth vessels." But it was too late for regrets. The barrier around Earth could not be lowered without a unanimous vote from all 847 species. No one wanted to admit they had made a mistake. Pirates became bolder without human patrol ships disrupting their operations. The famous human captain had shut down 3 major pirate cartels before the containment protocol. Now those same cartels were rebuilding and attacking merchant ships again. The people, who had been helped by human farming techniques, started having food problems again. Without human agricultural advisors, their new crops were failing. But the Galactic Council refused to let any humans through the barrier, even to help with humanitarian crises. "The containment must be total," insisted. "If we allow any exceptions, the humans will find ways to expand their influence." Perhaps the most serious problem was the supremacy. This aggressive alien empire had been quiet for decades, held in check by the balance of power in the galaxy. But with humanity gone, they became bolder. They started annexing neutral worlds near their borders. They claimed these planets for defensive purposes, but everyone knew it was simple conquest. In the past, human diplomatic threats had helped protect smaller worlds from expansion. "Where are the human negotiators now?" asked President of the small republic as ships surrounded her. "They always found ways to stop the before." But there were no human negotiators anymore. The Republic surrendered after a brief fight, becoming the latest addition to the supremacy. Other small nations watched nervously as they grew stronger. The major powers like the Hegemony and Trade Federation were too busy with their own territories to protect smaller worlds. The Galactic Peacekeeping Force was not designed to fight a real war. Meanwhile, Doctor's readings from the Earth barrier became more disturbing each day. The energy outputs were now 10 times higher than when the barrier was first activated. Whatever the humans were building, it was massive. "We need to tell the Council about this," said as they watched their instruments record another energy spike. "I have tried," Doctor replied. "They do not want to hear it. They are too proud to admit the containment might not be working as planned." The truth was that many galactic leaders were starting to have doubts about the containment protocol. Trade profits were lower without human customers. Scientific progress had slowed without human researchers contributing new ideas. Even entertainment was more boring without human creative works. But admitting these problems would mean admitting the containment was a mistake. No politician wanted to be responsible for that kind of failure. Ambassador of the Trade Federation met secretly with other concerned leaders. "The humans were annoying," he admitted, "but they were also useful. Our economy was actually growing faster when they were part of it." "They are becoming a real threat," added General of the Military Coalition. "Human tactical advisors helped us develop new strategies. Without their input, our war planning is becoming stale and predictable." But these private admissions never became public policy. The containment protocol remained in effect, and Earth stayed hidden behind its quantum barrier. As the third year of containment ended, Doctor made a discovery that terrified her. The barrier was not just being modified, it was being weakened from the inside. The humans had found a way to gradually reduce the quantum field strength without triggering the automatic alarms. At this rate, she calculated, the barrier could fail completely within months. She tried one more time to warn the Galactic Council. This time, a few members listened to her data, but Chancellor dismissed her concerns as impossible. The quantum barrier cannot be broken from the inside, he declared. The humans do not have the knowledge or technology to affect our containment systems. Doctor left the meeting knowing that the galaxy was not prepared for what was coming. She had done everything she could to warn them. Now she could only wait and hope she was wrong about her calculations. She was not wrong. The barrier was weakening every day, and when it finally collapsed, the galaxy would discover that 3 years of isolation had changed humanity in ways no one could have imagined. The quantum barrier around Earth's solar system collapsed without any warning. Doctor was monitoring her instruments when every reading suddenly dropped to zero. The massive energy field that had contained humanity for 3 years simply vanished in an instant. "That is impossible," she whispered, staring at her blank screens. The energy release from the barrier's collapse was so enormous that it knocked out communication systems across 3 galactic sectors. Emergency alarms blared throughout the monitoring station. A rush to her workstation. "What happened? Did our equipment break?" "No," Doctor said, her voice shaking. "The barrier is gone, completely gone." Within hours, the news spread across the galaxy. The Terran containment protocol had failed. Earth was no longer isolated. Panic swept through government buildings on dozens of worlds. Chancellor called an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council. "This must be a temporary malfunction," he insisted. "We can rebuild the barrier within days." But Doctor's report crushed that hope. The barrier was not destroyed from outside, she explained to the assembled leaders. The collapse came from within. The humans found a way to completely neutralize our quantum field technology. "That is impossible," repeated a Trade Federation representative. "They had no access to our scientific data. They could not have learned how to break the barrier." "Apparently they could," Doctor replied grimly. The first human ships emerged from the Sol system 12 hours after the barrier fell. But these were not the same vessels that had been trapped 3 years earlier. The new human fleet looked completely different from anything the galaxy had seen before. The ships were larger and sleeker, with hulls that seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. They moved through space with perfect coordination, as if controlled by a single mind. Their energy signatures made veteran military analysts uncomfortable. The readings suggested power levels that should have been impossible for ships of that size. Admiral commanded the flagship UES Indomitable from the bridge of a vessel that dwarfed the largest alien battleships. She was a stern woman with gray hair and cold eyes. 3 years of isolation had changed her, just as it had changed all of humanity. "This is Admiral of the United Earth Fleet," she broadcast on all galactic communication frequencies. "We are returning the courtesy you showed us 3 years ago." Her fleet did not attack immediately. Instead, the human ships spread out across the galaxy's major hyperspace routes. Within days, they had positioned themselves at every important trade junction and communication relay. The message was clear without being spoken. Humanity now controlled the galaxy's transportation network. "What do they want?" Chancellor demanded during another emergency council meeting. "Why are they just sitting there?" His military advisors had no good answers. Human ships had appeared in over 200 star systems simultaneously. This level of coordination should have been impossible without using the galaxy's own communication networks, but the humans had somehow done it independently. General of the hegemony military studied the tactical reports with growing dread. Their deployment pattern is perfect, he admitted. They have cut off all our major supply lines and isolated our fleet concentrations, but they have not fired a single shot. The first human action came against the hegemony border worlds, the same systems that belonged to Chancellor's people, but the humans did not attack the planets directly. Instead, they broadcast messages to the populations of those worlds. People of Prime, Admiral's voice echoed across the planet's communication networks. Your government voted to imprison an entire species based on fear and prejudice. We are here to offer you a choice. What happened next shocked the galactic leadership. The humans established protection zones around refugee camps and oppressed populations. They used some kind of new shield technology that made it impossible for hegemony forces to reach the areas under human protection. They are not conquering, reported a confused hegemony general. They are liberating. Our own people are welcoming them. This was true. For 3 years, the hegemony government had become more oppressive and controlling. They had used the human threat to justify new laws that restricted their own citizens' freedoms. Now those same citizens saw the humans as liberators from their own government. Similar scenes played out across dozens of worlds. The human fleet would arrive, establish protection zones around oppressed groups, and then wait. They never attacked first, but they made it clear they would defend anyone who sought their protection. The galactic military response was poorly organized and ineffective. Fleet commanders who had not fought humans in years discovered that all their tactical knowledge was obsolete. The new human ships moved in ways that established combat doctrine. They are jamming our targeting systems, reported Admiral of the Trade Federation Fleet after a disastrous encounter with human forces. But we cannot figure out how. Our weapons simply will not lock onto their ships. Worse yet, human ships seemed to know where enemy fleets were going before they got there. Ambushes failed because humans avoided them. Surprise attacks failed because humans were already prepared. It was as if humanity had developed some form of precognition. The truth was even more disturbing. During their 3 years of isolation, humans had solved several technological problems that the galaxy considered impossible. They had developed faster-than-light communication that did not require relay stations. Their computers could predict enemy movements by analyzing thousands of variables in real time. Most shocking of all, they had found ways to neutralize the primary weapons of most galactic fleets. Human ships generated some kind of field that caused energy weapons to lose focus and kinetic weapons to change direction. How did they advance this far in just 3 years? Demanded a panicked council member during yet another emergency meeting. Doctor had been studying the question since the barrier fell. I think they were never really contained, she said quietly. The barrier blocked physical travel but not information. They found ways to study our technology through the quantum field itself. That should be impossible, protested. So was breaking the barrier from the inside, Doctor replied. We underestimated them completely. As human forces continued their surgical strikes against oppressive governments, even worse news reached the Galactic Council. The Devourers had begun their main assault on the galaxy's outer rim. The ancient machine intelligences emerged from dark space with fleets of world-eating ships. They started systematically consuming entire star systems, harvesting the raw materials to build even more ships. The outer colonies were completely unprepared for such a massive invasion. We need to unite against the Devourers, pleaded Ambassador during an emergency session. This is an extinction-level threat. But the galaxy's military forces were scattered and demoralized. Many were already fighting human-backed rebellions on their own worlds. Others were too afraid to leave their home systems undefended against human attack. Chancellor sent a desperate message to Admiral. Admiral, the Devourers threaten us all. We must work together to stop them. His reply was broadcast across all galactic networks so everyone could hear it. Chancellor, 3 years ago your people decided that humans were too dangerous to be trusted with freedom. You voted to lock us away like criminals. Now you want our help against a real threat. She paused, letting her words sink in. You had your chance for cooperation. You chose oppression instead. Now deal with the consequences of your actions. The message was clear. Humanity had returned to the galaxy, but not as the same species that had been imprisoned. They were stronger, smarter, and angrier. The aliens who had voted for containment were about to learn what humans were really capable of when pushed too far. The galaxy that had celebrated its safety 3 years ago now faced two existential threats: the Devourers and the very humans they had tried to control. The vote that was supposed to make them safer had instead created their worst nightmare. The human expansion across the galaxy was unlike any conquest in recorded history. Admiral did not send her fleets to destroy cities or claim territory. Instead, she focused on dismantling the power structures that had enabled humanity's imprisonment. On Hegemony Prime, Chancellor watched helplessly as his government collapsed from within. Human-backed revolutionaries had taken control of 3 major cities. Worse yet, his own military commanders were defecting to join the rebellion. Sir, Colonel On has surrendered his entire regiment to the humans, reported his aide. He says he will not fight against people seeking freedom. Slammed his 4 fists on his desk. Traitors, they have all become traitors. But the truth was more complex. For years, the hegemony had grown more authoritarian. They had used fear of humanity to justify harsh laws and military buildup. Now their own soldiers were tired of oppressing innocent people. The human strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. They did not need to conquer the galaxy. They were teaching it to liberate itself. Similar scenes played out across dozens of worlds. Workers rose up against the industrial cartels that had enslaved them for generations. Farmers reclaimed their lands from corrupt nobles. On Nexus Prime itself, the crystal beings who had built the galactic capital were demanding democratic representation. Each rebellion was supported by human technology and advisors, but the fighting was done by the oppressed populations themselves. Humanity's role was to provide tools and protection, not conquest. They are giving weapons to primitives, complained Trade Federation Director. This violates every galactic law about technology transfer. Admiral's response was broadcast publicly. Director, your Federation voted to imprison an entire species without trial. Do not lecture us about galactic law. The technology humans shared was carefully chosen. They provided defensive shields, communication equipment, and transportation tools. But they also shared something more dangerous: knowledge about how their oppressive governments actually worked. Human information specialists had spent 3 years analyzing every aspect of galactic civilization. They knew which officials took bribes, which military units committed war crimes, and which corporations profited from slave labor. This information was shared freely with rebel groups. How do they know about our classified operations? Demanded General after humans revealed secret hegemony detention camps. These files were encrypted with quantum security. Doctor, who had become an unofficial human expert, provided the terrifying answer. I think they can break any encryption we have. During their isolation, they advanced far beyond our understanding of quantum computing. The revelation that human technology had surpassed galactic standards sent shockwaves through the scientific community. For centuries, alien species had assumed they were more advanced than humanity. Now they discovered they had been left behind. Human ships demonstrated capabilities that seemed like magic. They could jump to precise coordinates without navigation beacons. They could become completely invisible to all sensors. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to know what enemy commanders were planning before the aliens knew themselves. "It is like fighting against fortune tellers," complained Admiral after another failed attempt to surprise human forces. "They are always one step ahead of us." The human technological advantage became even more apparent when they began disabling galactic military assets without destroying them. Energy weapons simply stopped working when aimed at human targets. Computer systems crashed when they tried to target human ships. Communication networks went dead during military operations against human-backed rebels. "They are not just defeating us," realized Doctor. "They are making our own technology useless. This level of electronic warfare should be impossible." While the galaxy struggled with internal rebellions, the Devourer threat continued to grow. The machine intelligences had consumed 12 star systems and were advancing toward more populated regions. Refugee fleets clogged hyperspace lanes as entire civilizations fled there. The Devourer ships were massive and incredibly powerful. Each one was the size of a small moon and could consume an entire planet within days. They moved in perfect coordination, harvesting resources to build even more ships. "We have lost contact with the Rim colonies," reported General during an emergency council meeting. 15 billion sentient beings just gone. The galactic military response was pathetic. Fleets designed to police internal conflicts were no match for the ancient machine intelligence. Most battles ended with complete annihilation of the defending forces. "Our weapons cannot penetrate their shields," admitted Admiral. "They seem to absorb energy attacks and deflect kinetic weapons. We need new tactics, new technology." But the galaxy's best military minds were busy fighting human-backed rebellions. Resources that should have been used against the Devourers were wasted on internal conflicts. Chancellor found himself in an impossible position. His own empire was falling apart while an existential threat consumed the galaxy. In desperation, he sent increasingly frantic messages to Earth. "Admiral," his first message began, "I know we have had our differences, but the Devourers threaten all life in the galaxy. Surely humanity does not want to see billions die." His public response was cold. "Chancellor, you voted to lock us away based on the theory that we were too dangerous. Now you face a real danger and expect us to care about your survival." As the Devourer fleets advanced, more alien leaders attempted to negotiate with humanity. Trade Federation Director offered massive economic concessions. Crystal Dominion Empress Ha promised humanity equal status in galactic government. Even the aggressive Supreme Commander tried to make peace. Each offer was rejected. Humanity was not interested in negotiations with the same governments that had voted for their imprisonment. "You had 3 years to reconsider your decision," Admiral announced during a galaxy-wide broadcast. "You chose to celebrate our imprisonment instead. Now you face the consequences." The irony was bitter for many alien leaders. They had feared human military capabilities and voted for containment to prevent human expansion. Now, they desperately needed those same capabilities to survive. Doctor spent sleepless nights studying reports from both conflicts. The contrast was striking. Humans dismantled oppressive governments with surgical precision, while the Devourers consumed everything in their path with mindless efficiency. The humans could stop the Devourers, she realized. Their technology is advanced enough, but they are choosing not to help us. The revelation that humanity had the power to save the galaxy, but was refusing to do so, terrified even moderate alien leaders. It meant that humans were not just more advanced than expected. They were also more patient and calculating in their revenge. As more star systems fell to the Devourers, panic spread through the galactic core worlds. Stock markets crashed, governments collapsed, and millions of refugees fled toward human-protected zones. The irony was not lost on anyone. The safest places in the galaxy were areas under human protection. The same species that had been locked away for being too dangerous was now the only force capable of providing security. Chancellor watched his empire crumble while the Devourer fleets advanced toward his. His last message to Admiral was a desperate plea that was broadcast across the galaxy. Admiral, I was wrong. We were all wrong. Humans are not the monsters we feared. We are the monsters for trying to cage an entire species. Please, if there is any mercy left in humanity, help us. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for humanity's response. The same species that had been voted into imprisonment now held the power of life and death over their former captors. What happened next would determine the fate of every living being in the galaxy. The Devourer fleets reached the middle ring of galactic civilization, consuming 3 major industrial worlds in a single week. Entire star systems were stripped bare of resources as the machine intelligence prepared for its final advance toward the galactic core. On hundreds of worlds, alien governments collapsed as their populations fled in terror. The same council chambers that had once voted to imprison humanity now hosted desperate emergency sessions about imminent extinction. Ambassador Sarah stood once again in the great meeting hall on Nexus Prime. 3 years earlier, she had been a defendant watching her species being sentenced to imprisonment. Now, she held the title of Secretary General of Terran External Affairs, and the galaxy's survival depended on her words. The contrast was striking. Where once 847 species had sat in judgment of humanity, now only 623 remained. The rest had either been consumed by devourers, destroyed by internal rebellions, or simply collapsed from the chaos. The aliens who remained looked desperate and broken. Chancellor was barely recognizable. His gray skin had turned almost white from stress, and one of his 4 arms was missing, lost during a rebel attack on his capital city. When he stood to address Sarah, his voice shook with exhaustion. Secretary General, he began, I stand before you not as a leader but as someone who has lost everything. My empire is gone, my people are scattered, and the devourers will reach our within days. Murmurs of agreement filled the hall. Other alien leaders nodded as they recognized their own desperate situations in his words. 3 years ago, we voted to contain humanity because we feared what you might become, continued. We were afraid of your growth, your adaptability, your refusal to accept limitations. We thought caging you would make us safer. Sarah stood quietly, letting him speak without interruption. We were right to fear you, he said, his voice growing stronger. But we were wrong about everything else. You did become something we could never have imagined, not conquerors but liberators, not destroyers but protectors. He gestured toward the nearly empty council chambers. Look around you. Half the galaxy is gone. The other half is begging for your help. We created this situation through our own arrogance and prejudice. A crystalline representative from the Dominion stood up. Secretary General, the Devourers have consumed 47 star systems. At their current rate of advance, they will reach Earth within 2 months. Surely humanity cannot want to see the galaxy completely destroyed. Sarah finally spoke, her voice calm and measured. Representative, your people voted to lock us away because you believed we were too dangerous to be trusted with freedom. You were afraid we might grow too powerful. You were afraid we might not follow your rules. She paused, looking around at the desperate faces. You were correct on all counts. We have grown more powerful than you imagined. We do not follow your rules anymore. And yes, we are very dangerous to anyone who threatens innocent lives. Chancellor stepped forward. What are your terms for helping us? Sarah activated a holographic display that showed a document written in multiple alien languages. The new Galactic Charter, she announced. These are humanity's requirements for assistance against the Devourer threat. The terms were revolutionary. All military forces of oppressive governments would be disbanded. Every sapient being in the galaxy would have guaranteed civil rights regardless of species or origin. Democratic representation would be established for all populations. Most importantly, Earth would have permanent veto power over any future galactic legislation. "You want us to surrender our sovereignty," protested a Trade Federation representative. "No," Sarah replied firmly. "We want you to surrender your ability to oppress others. Your sovereignty was never the right to enslave, imprison, or discriminate against innocent beings." The debate was intense but brief. Every minute of delay meant more worlds consumed by the devourers. Species after species cast their votes, each one a formal surrender to human leadership in exchange for survival. The final vote was unanimous. 623 species formally submitted to the new galactic charter and requested immediate human intervention against the devourer threat. Admiral received the authorization while standing on the bridge of her flagship near the advancing devourer fleet. For 3 years, she had prepared for this moment. Now humanity would show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. "All units, this is Admiral," she broadcast to the human fleet. "You are authorized to engage the devourers with full capability. Show them what Earth has learned about war." What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history. The human fleet had been holding back during their conflicts with alien governments, using only a fraction of their true capabilities. Against the devourers, they unleashed everything. Human weapons that could rewrite the fundamental programming of machine intelligence turned entire devourer fleets against each other. Shields that could redirect energy through dimensional space sent the machine's own attacks back at them with increased power. Most devastating of all, humans had developed viruses that could infect and destroy artificial intelligence networks. The Battle of Nexus Prime lasted only 3 hours. When it was over, the massive Devourer command fleet had been completely destroyed. Their gigantic ships floated dead in space, their AI cores burned out by human cyberweapons. "How?" whispered Doctor as she watched the aftermath of the battle. "How did they become so powerful in just 3 years?" Admiral provided the answer during her post-battle broadcast. "Doctor, you asked the wrong question. You should ask why we held back for so long." The truth was that humanity had always possessed the potential for this level of technological advancement, but they had chosen restraint during their early years in galactic society. They had deliberately limited their growth to avoid threatening their alien neighbors. "We wanted to be part of your community," explained. "We held back our true capabilities because we hoped to earn your trust through patience and cooperation. Your vote to imprison us ended that hope." The remaining devourer fleets throughout the galaxy were hunted down and destroyed within weeks. Human task forces appeared wherever the machine intelligence had established footholds, systematically dismantling thousands of years of devourer expansion. When the threat was finally eliminated, the galaxy began the difficult process of rebuilding. True to their word, humans helped former enemies reconstruct their shattered worlds. But the reconstruction came with enforced democratic reforms and civil rights protections. Chancellor found himself governing a much smaller but freer society. His former empire had been broken into dozens of independent worlds, each with its own elected government. But the people were happier and more prosperous than they had been under authoritarian rule. "I still do not understand," he told Sarah during a reconstruction planning meeting. "Why show us mercy? We imprisoned you out of fear and prejudice. You had every right to let us face the devourers alone." Sarah's answer became famous throughout the rebuilt galaxy. "Chancellor, freedom is not something you vote on. It is something you earn, defend, and extend to others. We hope you have learned that lesson." The ceremony marking the galaxy's liberation was held on Earth, in the same city where humanity had once planned their desperate defense against galactic oppression. Former enemies knelt not in humiliation, but in gratitude for humanity's protection and guidance. Doctor, now serving as the scientific advisor to the new Galactic Council, presented her final report on human technological advancement. "They could have conquered us at any time," she concluded. "Even before the containment, they were holding back their true capabilities. They chose cooperation over domination until we forced them to choose otherwise." The new galaxy that emerged was radically different from the old one. Trade flowed freely between species that had once been enemies. Scientific knowledge was shared openly rather than hoarded by powerful governments. Most importantly, the rights of individuals were protected regardless of their species or origin. Human patrol fleets maintained peace throughout galactic space, but they were careful never to become oppressors themselves. Regular elections were held on all worlds, monitored by international observers to ensure fairness. 10 years later, Ambassador Sarah returned to Nexus Prime for the anniversary of galactic liberation. The great meeting hall was filled with representatives from over 1,000 species, including many that had been discovered and contacted during the post-war expansion. "Some of you were there when the old galaxy voted to imprison humanity," she said, addressing the assembly. "You thought you were protecting yourselves from a dangerous species, but you only made us dangerous to those who threaten innocent lives." She gestured toward the diverse crowd of representatives. "Look around you now. This is what the galaxy becomes when freedom is protected instead of feared. This is what we could have built together if you had chosen trust over suspicion." Chancellor, now an elderly leader of his small democratic republic, spoke for many former opponents. "We tried to cage you because we feared what you might become. We never imagined you might become our salvation." Sarah's final words echoed across the galaxy and became the unofficial motto of the new civilization. "The strong exist to protect the weak, the free exist to liberate the oppressed, and we all exist to ensure that no one votes away another's freedom ever again." The galaxy had learned its lesson. Freedom was not negotiable, justice was not optional, and humanity would always stand ready to defend both. The universe was a safer place because Earth had refused to accept the bars of its cage.